Do people know how you got into this business? You don't tell that story very often. The transition that you made.
Well, you were instrumental in it. You were instrumental in it.
We sat right there. It was a Bennigan's.
Yes, it was.
Bennigan's.
Bennigan's.
It was a
City Line Avenue?
What? It was City Line Avenue Bennigan's. I get called to a summit meeting by you.
Yes. So I get offered the job. I was coming from New York. I get the job at the Inquirer. I went for an interview at the New York Times, and I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. And so they said, you got to get cleansed from the Post, because the Post was, not a respected newspaper in that sense. So I go to get the job. The Inquirer, I'm home. I'm loving it. It's great. The whole thing. I do a fill-in show like Mikey Miss. I did a fill-in show with the great Ray Didinger, right? And so we're hanging out, doing the whole thing. And they offered me, much like they offered Mike, the drive time, they offered me middays with Glenn. And so I don't know what to do. I loved to write. Like, to this day, I still love writing. And I was completely torn. Mike is an incredible orator, right? He's got an amazing broadcast way. I didn't. My first call when I was on the air, a guy calls up and says, "You sound like you should be cutting pepperoni on 9th Street." All right? And I'm like a serious writer. You're like, yeah, all right, whatever. And so I asked Mike. I was really nervous about it. So I Mike, you got to meet me. And I just poured my soul to Mike to help me make the decision.
Yeah, and you were a great writer, and I said you should never give that up.
Yes.
But here's what you should use radio as a vehicle for, because you're going to make a little more money. You're going to probably have a family, so you can be good at that and never abandon writing. It was like the best of both worlds for you, I thought. Oh,
it was amazing advice. I mean, it was so I look back on it, and it was the perfect advice. And you've also foresaw it too. Like, you foresaw the business and the electronic world.
You're a sweetly naive guy.
Yes.
And the first time,
still am.
Yeah, you are. And the first time I met you, you were trying to break into this business as a journalist. I don't even know who you were working for at the time, right? What was the
well, at that point, I was a stringer. I was at Temple.
You were a stringer at Temple.
Yeah.
And you were working, and who were you working? We were covering the NCAA tournament.
I was working for the Woonsocket News of Rhode Island.
Oh, big gig.
Yes.
So
$25.
So it's the NCAA regional at the Meadowlands Arena, and he would come up to me sheepishly. We used to work off these little Radio Shack computers that had a screen like this big.
It would hold 3 stories.
Right. That was like the first technology.
Yeah, it was the Tandy.
And you had to plug it into a phone somehow, or
couplers.
Get a coupler and put the phone thing on the couplers. And so Anthony goes all the way up to cover it with the apparatus, which he does not know how to use.
No idea. I think I bought it that day.
It's one thing, you're covering the thing that he didn't think of, like, okay, once I cover the story, how do I transmit the story?
Yes. No idea.
So,
you had to buy your own?
What's that?
You had to buy your own?
Yes.
No. You did?
No, I bought my own.
Oh, you bought your own.
Because, remember, because I wasn't working for I was stringing. So I was at Temple, and I was trying to hustle and do jobs to kind of get
probably
noticed.
said, yeah, I can cover that.
Oh, yeah.
See, that's the first step. You don't tell them.
No.
I'll cover it, but I don't know how to use it.
The answer is always yes.
Right.
Like, when you're trying to do something, you always say yes and figure it out later.
Yeah. Because if you say, I don't know how to use the Radio Shack, they go, okay, well, sorry.
Right.
We go to the next guy. So you took it a step at a time. And you figured you'll eventually get to learn how to send it.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people wouldn't do that on deadline.
Right.
But that's
correct.
Like, they would do it hours before.
Correct.
You did it literally on deadline.
Well, I got the job that day, I think, and I literally went out, bought the piece at Radio Shack.
Wow. See, now that's enterprise.
And then went and drove up and covered the game. And I didn't know. And I see Mike, and I'm like, oh, man, that's MG Missanelli. Like, I loved Mike. Like we growing up in Philadelphia, the sports section, that was everything. So me and my cousin Joey, we would sit back and we would read cover to cover the Daily News and the Inquirer, right? And the Sunday paper, I'll never forget, Sunday mornings, we would be sharing the paper together. Like, you want the baseball, I'll take the college, the football, whatever. And that's how we would do it. So Mike was royalty, like college basketball, and it was so big, college basketball. And so here's Mike, and I'm like, oh my God, here's Mike Missanelli. So I figured he was a paisan. I go introduce myself, and I thought he would help me. And he did. Nice. And I was right.
Oh, hooked you right up. You got the wound socket people, and we're able to admire your brilliance for that Dave story.
We all silly like the mayor.